The way that Western media is playing this right now is that Vladimir Putin is on the run. Is Vladimir Putin on the run? Like, we need to play like Band on the Run by like Paul McCartney. So the Western media over the past 24 hours has been saying that Vladimir Putin, now realizing that Ukraine is unattainable for him, Russia is now saying it's going to scale back its Ukrainian invasion forces to focus on liberating the eastern Donbass region of Ukraine. And in order to save face, that's what they're going to do. After losing 20 battalions, they say. But Western intelligence warns that it could all be a part of a trap. But I love these headlines, though. Is Putin on the run? And if you dig more deeply into this, what are the Russian leaders saying this morning? Is that they are looking to focus on the Donbass region. But that's what they've always been saying.
And that's where they started, right? And that moving into the Donbass region was a fairly low-hanging fruit. They did it to begin with, right? And nobody thought that they would move further beyond that, but they did. So it seems like the Western media, at least, is framing this as if, well, you know, they're just going to take what they knew was readily available and they'll call it a win because they do seem to not be able to easily overtake other populated areas of Ukraine that are not pro-Russian. Is that true, then?
I'd love to hear people in our chat about this, because a lot of people are saying, I don't believe that that's the case at all. Like, that Putin's on the run, that he's in retreat now, and maybe that's the case. It's been very difficult to get accurate assessments of what's been going on there in this region. When you have the Western media, which lies for a living, pouring out false and disinformation about what's happening. You have, of course, the Russian disinformation campaign from Russia on Putin's side. Mm-hmm. It's like two disinformation campaigns colliding, two liars yelling at each other. I don't believe Putin, but pay attention to what he said all along, right? The denazification of the east of Ukraine, but specifically those ethnic Russian areas, which have been under attack for many, many years. A violation of the Minsk agreements, a violation of the accords that they had set in place. These ethnic Russians who have been killed for the last many, many years, thousands of them. So when there have been people fleeing the borders, hundreds of thousands of these ethnic Russians have fled into Mother Russia to get out of this. They didn't go to Poland. They went the opposite way because they felt safer. And so this is what Putin has said all along was going to be a protection of these regions. And now maybe that's the case. There's a scaling back, but maybe this was always the plan.
Right.
But the way the Western media, of course, is painting it is Putin's on the run. He can't handle it anymore.
Well, you heard in the president's speech, he just said that Putin saying that he was liberating Ukraine from Nazis was a lie, and Putin knew it was a lie. Whereas the United Nations had admitted before this conflict that Nazis in Ukraine were a problem and had been asking Ukraine to deal with this for several years now. So that piece of it does not seem to be a lie. Russian Defense Ministry updated their losses in Ukraine. They say they've lost about 1,300 soldiers in the conflict. Ukraine says that is wrong to the order to a magnitude of 10. They're saying it's around 15,000 body count. We have no way of knowing, right? That Russia now is saying 3,825 soldiers have been wounded, whereas Ukraine is putting that at about twice the amount of deaths. So at this stage of the game, who knows?
Lee Curtis in our chat says, I don't believe Putin will really turn tail and run. He will wait till things die down and then strike even harder. You might be right about that. Irish in Twitch says, I think we're getting disinformation from many areas, not just the United States and Russia.
Agree.
Absolutely the case.
Yes.
It's not just United States and Russia. We're seeing it from European countries providing disinformation as well. You're also seeing censorship at a large scale. I mean, try getting access to RT News or Sputnik News or any in the European Union, and you'll be shut down to get access to those sources. They've already put a clamp down on that. So has social media. So getting information, really one of the few ways that you can actually get some information is through Telegram or other social media channels, specifically Telegram channels right now. A lot of soldiers have been posting information on their Telegram channels and sharing it to social media that way, because at least that way it can't be blocked or clamped down upon. So that's how a lot of this information is actually getting out. and then trickling its way out to Twitter
Right.
before Twitter censors certain things as well.
Well, I mean, you could also spin it to say that Ukraine is on the run because Ukraine has started to say that we are willing to declare ourselves neutral. Leaders from Ukraine and Russia are going to meet in Istanbul, Turkey, within the next day or so. And who knows how long that meeting will take. But they are saying, okay, the neutrality thing, not off the table. We will consider it now, or at least that's so,
Yeah, but is that the case though? Because what's interesting is like Zelensky comes out and he makes this concession to say, and he's really sending mixed messages right now. And as Kyle Anzalone reports over at antiwar.com, he says the Ukrainian leader said he was open to compromise on the country's Donbass region. Then he said he would prioritize territorial integrity of Ukraine. So, okay, we're willing to concede Donbass to Putin for peace. But wait a second, now we're not. So who got in his ear? I have to say, I believe it's Western leaders who want a continuation of this proxy war. If there's an end to this, Putin goes home, Donbass is now under Russian control, then that's it. Then the United States doesn't have its
that's
proxy
it for
war.
now, right? That's what the United States is worrying about is just, 8 years ago there was Crimea. Now there's Donbass. Like, what is next? Because there can continue to be a spread of Western separatism. So who knows, right? But it does seem like at least the convoy, the leaders that were moving into Istanbul for this meeting, did say the word neutrality. We're okay with it. We will think on it. It's a maybe. It's like when your kids ask if you can go to the movies this weekend. That's a maybe, right? We'll see when we get there.
You promised us.
No, there's
Mommy.
no promises in war or parenting.
Right.
This is why I almost never make promises.
He said earlier on CNN, he said there was a willingness to negotiate about giving up territory. Last week, he told CNN, there are compromises for which we cannot be ready as an independent state. Any compromises related to our territorial integrity and our sovereignty. He later then, that's the statement that he made and said that he took that further and saying, look, before we have any sort of, I guess you don't want to give up your land before you actually have a formal meeting. Like you don't want to, you don't give up your negotiating tactic before you sit down at the table.
Right.
Perhaps. And maybe that's where Moscow is demanding that Ukraine recognize the Crimean Peninsula as Russian. And then, of course, the Donbass republics as well. And seeing whether or not President Zelensky goes along with that. If he comes out ahead of this meeting and says, we're willing to do that, then what do you actually get in a meeting? If you already know your other position, you already know the
Well,
other
I mean,
position.
what they say in the press is not necessarily what they're going to negotiate with. Who knows at this point, right? Yeah. This is what we think, but it almost doesn't matter.
Yeah. Again, Moscow. So Zelensky stated his openness to a compromise in a 90-minute video call with Russian media. We'll see. Again, as this meeting comes up, we'll have more on that as we look at whether or not Putin is actually on the run, whether or not there is peace talks. But again, the Western media absolutely does not want this. Now,
but it does seem to be there's an end in sight for the war in Ethiopia after 16 bloody months. The government there has declared a humanitarian truce with rebel forces. We'll see if that ends the bloodshed. But this is just your reminder of an inconvenient truth that there are bloodier wars happening right now that also deserve our attention and our dollar donation on top of your grocery bill if your grocery store like mine is asking for that.
I have to say I was down at a center part of our city where there's normally an enormous flag of the country that we live in flying above, right? And in its replace of the country that we live in, its flag is replaced with a giant Ukrainian flag flying over.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we know
But
where you
this
stand.
morning I was in the grocery store and there was a sign that said, due to Visa and MasterCard's decisions to no longer work in Russia, any Russian issued bank card will no longer be accepted. And I thought, what are these expats supposed to do then? They have to go they can't even buy groceries for a conflict that has nothing to do with them. That's no fault it's just, if you don't accept your card, we can't accept your card. But, what a cluster for people to try and just live their lives and who are not politicians.
If you like this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, we have a membership program. For the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support independent journalism just by going to morninginvest.com/join.
You get access to exclusive videos, plus the ability to join and chat with us live. We really appreciate your subscription, and you are supporting independent journalism.